Alright, take two. Sorry for complete darkness, but from our playing around earlier, we couldn't find out how to get only some of the lights in the room to be on. So what we're doing today is we're not just showing you the new version of Burst, we're showing you the prototypes that led up to it.
There we
That's
go.
a joke from one of our staffers, Gene. That's him riding X2 at Magic Mountain in California. We photoshopped out the restraints because we absolutely love the pose of that.
And that is our personal Easter egg. It's going to be in pretty much all Team Kaizen products.
Some highlight options. Okay, so first of all, this is the Flash prototype. We made this in 2011, and how it first started is we have a team of about 30 people. We were already working on a martial arts fighting game called Shattered Soul. We were building it originally in Unreal Dev Kit, and now we're building it in Unity. We're currently in animation stage, and we kind of noticed on team that at any given point on our staff, there was only one section of staff working, whether it was concept artists, programmers, animators, modelers. We're like, well, you know what, we could probably handle a small side project. And we always kind of wanted to do something involving fireworks and involving music. And so we kind of came
around Great Falls, like the 10th Street Bridge, as you can see.
Yeah, the 10th Street Bridge right there. So we came up with this idea of a firework game where you had 4 separate launchers, and they would fill up with fireworks. And actually, I think if you tap a few more times, it'll let us actually see the beat meter. So what was happening is you'd have fireworks filling up in here. You could pick up to 4 fireworks from any one of these. Then you'd see a light come down here, and once it hit the window, you hit detonate, and that would make it so that you're blowing fireworks up on the beat. And when we were first writing these ideas down, we thought it sounded kind of cool because, you know, here you have an asset management sim. You had to make sure you didn't use up all your fireworks at once. That
you'd be able to dock specific kinds of fireworks in each of the 4 launchers.
Yeah, and that, you know, that mixed with the rhythm game, on paper it sounded really cool. Unfortunately, in execution, it turned out that people were writing us left and right, because we had it playable on our website for a while, that people were saying their eyes were stuck here and here, they were never seeing the fireworks above the bridge, and that they were really mad because that the blowing up the fireworks was kind of the reward in the game. It was kind of the treat you got for doing your job right, and people were being basically taken out of their reward. Just click no, it's just going to show you the same thing. Yeah. But make sure you do highest thing.
Yeah. Don't look at the middle one.
Yeah. there's a long story there.
Yeah.
Here's, like, you'll see it in a sec what it looks like.
And the of was we had that was ad placement.
Yeah, so here this is what we originally had. We had a crowd meter that would tell you how well you were doing, your score up here, and if you notice that somewhere around 30% of the screen is not even viewable of fireworks. It's all these different buttons and all this different chaos. Trev's going to show you just quick what the fireworks look like. That's what the old Flash prototype looked like. So we got a lot of feedback from that on our website. We decided that we were, or at least at the time we thought we were ready to start doing it in Unity 3D. So we decided to go ahead and make a quick Unity 3D version, and Trevor's booting that up right now. And this is the in-between version. We actually showed this at the 406 Club at one point. They were kind enough to let us boot it up on a TV. And if you look, it looks very similar. We thought we were addressing, and Trevor, just go ahead and I think hit resume. And, you know, we moved the meter over there, we moved the pause feature over there, and we thought that we were solving a lot of the problems that we were getting from people writing in by putting the beat meter in the dead middle instead of on the far side. And these are placeholder fireworks too, by the way.
But they do look much prettier.
Oh yeah. But it still kind of got to the point. This one we never posted it on our website. We just had private sessions where we brought people over to our house, or like one programmer down in Florida for us had private sessions where he brought people over and we had them, you know, give us harsh feedback basically about what they thought. And what we ended up getting is the exact same problem. People were still feeling like they had to spend all their time focusing on that, and the fireworks, which we were constantly saying was like the big draw to this, were getting lost in the mix. So now we're going to jump in, and I think you have to hit escape to get out of that version. And sorry, that's a really buggy version. I'm actually really glad it didn't bug out on us like the projector did. But this one now is the newest version.
Which one do I click?
First test, the very bottom one. I apologize. I'm sorry about that. I should have told you. Okay, this new one doesn't run full screen yet, but it is the current in-progress build. Now, first, Trevor can click on how to play so I can explain this. This is the new version. Now, the new version, less than 15% of the screen is taken up by the buttons. You have,
and we're possibly changing that as well.
Yeah, we're still working on it. This is very what we call alpha or beta stage, where it's not ready to be a final game yet, but we're working away on it. How the game works now is you have your play pause feature there. We put the crowd meter on that side. Then here we have 2 buttons. This button changes your explosion type. This button cycles through periodic table of elements. Because actually in real life, when fireworks blow up, it's a different element in each firework that gives different colors. So basically you're selecting your colors, but we're actually letting the players know what periodic table elements give those colors in real life. And as a little bit of fun...
As you can see right here, Curium is blue.
Yeah. And one of the things we throw in for fun, too, is we also let them use the element radium, which is actually too dangerous to use in real life, but gives a neon green.
Kind of a Chernobyl effect.
Yeah, exactly. Then how they blow up the fireworks is they wait for these circles to turn green and tap them when they turn green. That way you're actually touching the firework directly. And that also enables us to free up all of this for gameplay and for visuals. So now Trevor's going to speed through it really quick and show you guys. Another thing to mention you're going to see a little coin pop up right there. That's a new feature we've added to that's going to be coming out in the final game called the Pyro Coin. Basically, if you get 15 fireworks blown up on the beat in a row, it gives you that coin. You can cash it in at any time you want, and that when you cash it in, you realize that this isn't just a 2D environment you're looking at. It rotates in full 3D and lets you just go nuts all over the screen, creating as many explosions as you can in 15 seconds. And it should be noted this song, too, is a Great Falls Band. It's the Hope Movement. And notice, too, that if Trevor clicks one off the beat, it won't blow up. It'll fizzle off and fly off to the side.
So do that, Trev. Off the beat. There you go.
So that way players have more direct visual indications of what's going on. And also, since this is a development build, we have a nice little way to cheat. We can give ourselves a pyro coin by typing.
I wasn't going to tell them.
Oh.
I was going to make it look like I was awesome.
And this is the 10th Street Bridge. And also, one of our 3D artists in Canada, too, really liked the Downtown Great Falls logo, so she created it in 3D to be a part of the environment, too.
Or did you already change the color?
Yeah, I've changed them constantly.
Oh, okay.
See?
Gotcha.
And of course, this is still, in beta stage. We're still working on it, still expanding it. But one of the things that, we've really kind of come to learn in developing this version...
Oh, I lost.
Yeah. But, one of the reasons we wanted to give this talk is not just to show off this new version of Burst, which we're really proud of, even though it's still in alpha or beta stage. It's to give people a deeper look, because when people look at a game on a shelf at GameStop or Retrofix, they immediately think that game just kind of magically popped into existence there. They don't think about how a game had to go through many different iterations to arrive at a final product. Like a very famous example that a lot of people who follow the industry know of is from Insomniac Games. They, before making Ratchet and Clank for the PlayStation 2, they actually made a tech demo, and it was a fully realized demo where you could run around and everything, of this kind of tribal adventure involving a girl with a stick for a weapon that was called Girl with a Stick. Once they got it far enough that it was playable, they just realized after playing it that it wasn't really for what they wanted to do. It wasn't really fitting with their vision and what they wanted to do. So they threw it out and ended up making Ratchet. And what we're trying to show people is kind of pulling that curtain back too, that when you do game development, you'll have an idea that sounds awesome on paper, and then when you execute it, it's not that necessarily your whole idea sucks. It wasn't that our whole game of Burst sucked, but there was this very specific part, that part where we were having them look at those buttons the entire time, that took away from what we wanted the final experience to be. And so we had to take apart those elements and only keep the ones that really mattered.
And something important to throw on top of that as well, to note, is that when we did the pyrocoin thing at first, you would actually draw your finger around in the sky like drawing with a sparkler, and you were able to write your name and stuff like a sparkler, but it just didn't look as right. It wasn't as fun, and we decided that blowing up fireworks continuously for that 15 seconds is better than that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's another thing that the sparkler element sounded excellent on paper. Like, it sounded really cool, and then in execution we found a better way, and that's a huge part of software development and game development, is that iteration, realizing you're not going to start at the very beginning of making your final product. You're going to be making something that you're going to learn from, you're going to trip over it a couple times, you're going to get stressed out, want to throw your computer out the window at points. And
break a mouse or two.
Yeah, and then you're going to have people look at it and give you criticisms on it. there's a whole science to that, learning to take the difference between constructive criticism and negative attacks. Like
Well, and not only that, but even positive criticism can be as damaging as negative.
yeah,
Constructive is better than positive a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then that's another point too. You don't want to have people involved looking at your product that are just there to tell you how great you are. You want people to say,
Well, it looks awesome, but we could change this, and this might look a little bit better.
yeah, exactly. You want that, and it's kind of ironic because I'm wearing the Montana Programmer shirt. For those of you who don't know, it's a picture of a guy flipping a table. That comes from a Japanese term called chabudai ga eshi. That means flipping the tea table, and in traditional Japanese language, it just means someone went nuts or went off the deep end. You know, a lot of things like that, or flipped their top. In game design terms, what chabudai ga eshi can mean is that when you are developing a game, you get it to a certain point and you realize that there's huge chunks of it that aren't working, so you flip the tea table and start the project back at zero and rip out the parts you don't like. Another famous example being on the PlayStation classic Resident Evil 2. The version that actually hit retail that we all know and love is actually the second game to be called Resident Evil 2. Capcom had another game internally that they had 80% complete that involved a scene where you went to a zombie-infested zoo and everything. That when they got to that 80% mark, they just realized, even though they spent like a year and a half already on it, that it was just not working. So they ripped everything out and started all over again with almost an entirely new story, entirely new assets. And that's just a part of it. When an idea sounds good on paper, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be good in execution, and the only way to find out sometimes is to jump in and get a prototype. And so that's why we didn't just want to show the new one, we wanted to show the blood, sweat, tears, and goofs that led to it.
So I have one question.
Sure.
Certainly.
Originally, I thought this game was going to be for mobile devices and stuff.
Yes.
That's our aim. Like, we don't have any platforms specified yet because we're developing in Unity, and the great thing about Unity is it publishes to everything under the sun. Our dream, our kind of hope right now is that we're kind of aiming for PlayStation Mobile, which will be enabled for Unity by the end of the year, and PlayStation Mobile publishes to high-end Android devices as well as the PlayStation Vita handheld.
Yeah, I was just wondering with
Don't laugh at me,
the
Trev.
little circles that were going up.
Yeah,
that
those
you
need to
could
be
touch-
bigger.
You could touch those easy with the mouse, but you know,
Yeah.
They definitely need to be bigger.
a little device. is
We've
gonna be-
discussed that internally too.
Yeah, we've discussed that a lot, that we're going to resize the rings and resize the touch ranges for them once we...
One funny thing about the fireworks internally is those fireworks are actually like 10,000 times too big, and it's impossible to resize them. In the engine, like the pack we bought, whoever created the pack made them massive, and so we had to take all of our assets and like blow them up 10,000%. Just because to make it fit with those fireworks. I mean, you can't tell in the build, but everything is in like an arena that's way bigger than it needs to be.
And then the color of the bridge is, there's a really funny story with that
Yeah.
too.
Because we have a program that does not speak English or art.
Well, he speaks English, but
He
like...
speaks broken English.
Yeah, he's from Latvia, so like what used to be Soviet bloc. But the funny part about it is when you get into game development, and we were just talking about this like before the meeting started, that you really do have like two major types of people. You have your programmers and you have your artists, and they are both very differently brained. And then off to the side, you have people that are kind of like me, the game designers, that have to try to put everything together and act as a mediator and a translator. And you have some programmers that can understand art kind of well. You have some artists that cannot kind of understand code pretty well. But if you get them in a room long enough, you eventually can get a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of craziness. And for instance...
You don't end up with Shakespeare.
But not unless you have really good interpretive skills, or
Yeah.
at least one of them has really good interpretive skills. But for instance, we were working on the bridge, and originally the bridge lights on there were just bright neon pink, like ice searing pink, and it looked cool, but it wasn't really representative of the real lights on the bridge. So I'm talking with him on Skype, and I just type in, "Hey man, can we make those just a tiny bit more purple?" And I get a message back saying, "Well, can you get me the RGB number values from Photoshop, like the exact numbers that would go into the code?"
We're like, take the slider, slide it to purple.
Yeah. And I ended up getting the numbers for him, but then another point was originally, like how the rings turn green when you can click them, they were originally set to turn green at any random point in the sky. And we found out that when that was happening, it was harder for players to realize that those were turning green on a beat. It was harder for them to anticipate which one was going to turn green next. So we wanted to make a region in the sky about this big, where we said, okay, they can turn green in here, so there's still some variance, they still look at different heights in the sky, but the player can kind of have an idea. They start to get a rhythm of where they're going to turn green and know when to hit. I sent him a Photoshop of an image of a screen print from the game with a blue box saying, okay, I want them to turn green in here. In Skype, I get about that much lines of code back. He said, that's the same thing, right? And I'm like, I can't tell you. Yeah, so, I mean, it's one of those things that...
I mean, the guy literally sees the in Matrix. Like...
Yeah, and it's part of it. You got to learn how to work with all those kinds of personalities. And it's back to... Even with this version, once we had the idea for this version where we were going to rip all the stuff that we held near and dear out and redo it, this is the 30th build of the new version. And I mean, it's just one of those things that we get a build. Okay,
well, that Flash version we showed you was probably the 60th version of it.
Yeah, so we get a build of it, write down the notes of what needs to be corrected, email it to either the artist or the programmer, whoever is responsible. Then they correct it, we get it back, and we figure it out again and again. And
probably another good story to share is about how he actually got the beats to work. Is the same programmer. He's like, I don't know anything about musical theory, so I'm going to program something for you guys where you can hit spacebar while listening to the song. Wherever you want to beat, hit the spacebar. So
yeah.
So literally we had to sit there and...
Yeah.
You know.
That was
a long night.
Long night.
So,
They come downstairs and go, oh.
need some air.
Yeah, and all just to get a build that we could test and see if it's even working right. So, of course, in the back of our head, we're like, okay, we're just trying to get the song nailed down. We don't even know if the game works, and you're just like, yeah. But
And then we got an email back from him saying, you guys started 5 minutes too early, or like 50 seconds too early or something. You have to wait for the song to get into its rhythm first. And we're like...
Yeah, well, like 5 seconds, because like our old version, like you saw in the Flash version, when you hit the detonate button, the fireworks just blowed up in the sky. You didn't see initial launch. We forgot about that, so we started hitting the space bar in that music program right away. And so the computer didn't know how to handle that because it had to give 5 seconds for the first group of shells to take off. And so when you'd start up the game, you'd see 30 shells take off all at once and immediately fail the player.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we're panicking because to us that means like at least 6 more hours gone. So, but I mean, the point we're trying to get at too is that, you know, if you get into this, just keep in mind that you're going to be problem solving all the time. You're going to be iterating a lot. I mean, especially game studios that like bigger established ones kind of have some problem showing this because, you know, they're signed with publishers and other people that have like non-disclosure agreements, so they can't totally open up and show every single step of the process. But it's a job that if you're passionate about it, it's a lot of fun, but there is times where you need those skills to be able to sit down, look at something, even though you just want to scream and chuck the computer that...
Well, and there's also a skill behind knowing when to, you know, if you're going cross-eyed, you need to step outside, take a minute, take an hour, take a day, you know.
Yeah, and also another thing that, you know, I guess one thing for us to end on, if no one else has any questions, is that if you're going to get involved in something like this, get involved in something that's very much a team aspect of it, because it was one of our programmers from Florida that wrote up a paper and posted it on our private site, like our team site, that went through step by step saying, okay, here's what we heard, here's how we can address it.
And actually, Caitlin helped with that.
Yeah, and he and Caitlin both talked about it too. And if you don't foster that kind of environment, you'll never get that kind of innovation. And, you know, for me personally, I was one of the people that came up with this whole managing the 4 launchers, and I thought it was such a cool idea, and I had to learn to step back, let that go, because that just wasn't working. So, like, one thing I would love to stress to people is be open to change. You know, just don't change for the sake of change, but be open to, if people are presenting you with facts on why something can work better, be open to implementing it, because you'll usually end up with a better product for it.
And thank you.
Well, thank you.
How do you turn this off?
Push the button.